So,
Oh my goodness. The stream was not working. Hopefully it's starting now. There it goes. There we go.
we are live streaming.
Yeah. Well, I broke down this entire studio to take it to the convention.
Right.
You know, all of these parts, all of these mics, the boards, everything. I broke it all down to take to convention. I was attempting to live stream the entire convention. I ended up not being able to live stream it because I had no hardline internet there in the conference room that I could connect to. So I just recorded it all. But I brought all this equipment back and hooked it all back up, and doesn't look like everything was perfect. I'm still having some issues here with my mic. Obviously, the setup, and there were a lot of things that I had to change the day of convention here on our broadcast computer and stuff, because the show we were doing that day wasn't streaming properly, and so I'm still doing a lot of work on fixing things here. So I need you to help carry this show while I run the technical side and try and fix all this.
Beautiful. So has everything the first 10 minutes hasn't gone? So no one started anything?
No,
Or-
well, the podcast is recording, so it's going to be up. But,
That's good. That's good. So if you hadn't heard what we were talking about, we're talking about convention, which was awesome. That just came out last weekend. And now,
the LPF Liberty State Convention in Newport Richey.
and kudos to really to Danielle for really pulling it off. She was probably the leg on all of it.
Oh, she was
And,
fantastic.
Freaking awesome with those desserts, damn. I'm like, I think I gained like 3 pounds just on desserts. I didn't eat anything the whole time except when I walked in because it was just about over, and she was like, "Oh, you got to try this," and I tried one of them. Like, "Oh, and try this one and this one and this one." Those things were great.
Yeah, there was a lot of good food. Oh my goodness, this actually sounds better.
That sounds right where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I think I got it. Oh, but do you hear the echo in there?
Yeah, I hear the hum.
Yeah, I don't know. Still something to figure out here.
But yeah, she really did a bang up job, especially with all the organization that has to go into something that big. And very cool for Ben Swan, even though he had a ton of stuff to do. Decided to sneak in for like, hey, listen, I'll fly all the way down there, do my deal, and fly out. You know,
Well,
whereas a lot of guys have probably been like, that's great, whatever. It's just a steak.
I think you should tell the story about the ride with Ben Swan.
So I decided I was going to work that morning. So I'm at work, and I knew that I was going to need to pick up Ben Swan at the airport. There we go. We just lost the echo. Nice.
Well, that's because I turned it all down.
And so I called Danielle, and I'm like, "Hey, does he have any luggage or anything?" So I could either go with a smart car or go with or I could drive up to the hotel and grab Greg's Fusion or whatever, or I could take the Hummer. She goes, "Oh, he's coming by himself. Doesn't have any luggage. He's only going to be here for 2 hours and fly in, do his part of the convention, and he's going to fly out because he has some big stuff that he has to do this weekend, some moves and everything." And I was like, "Sweet. Well, I can just swing on to the airport, pick him up in the Smart. It's a 2-seater car, and fly on down to the hotel." So I pick him up, and he's standing outside. He had texted me. I was actually inside the airport waiting on him. And I guess his flight came in early by like a lot, because his flight was supposed to come in at 7:35 or 11:35, and I got there at like 11:25, and I'm standing at the gate.
And he's standing outside.
And he's already outside. His flight had landed at like 10 after. So I text him, and he says, "Oh, we're downstairs by the Delta sign." So I drove around, and I go to pick him up, and he has this young lady standing next to him, and they're talking, and I figured, all right, well, someone here at the airport probably recognized him or something, and they're talking. So I hop out, and I'm like, "All right, Ben, how's it going?" And he shakes my hand. He's like, "Yeah, I have my daughter." I was like, I'm sorry, what? I was told you weren't bringing luggage." He goes, "Yeah, I just, me and my daughter, and you have a smart car." And so I called, like, "We have a problem. I might just need this guy a car real quick, because he has another person, and she was like, "Oh my God, I had no idea." And I was like, I should just known to bring my other car, but he was so super. Hey, let's just make this work. We can squeeze. So he was tight on his door, and I was tight on mine, and we put his daughter in the middle, and we Newport Richie from Tampa International in a smart car with 3 people in the rain, and that was exciting. So we're driving, and both of them are like just hysterically funny. So they're like taking selfies. They were taking selfies, and she's like a selfie pro. She's she's a teenager. She's got to be like 15, 16 years old or so, maybe 14. And she was, "Oh my God, Dad, I'm taking selfies." We're taking selfies. And, in a smart car, a selfie is like the whole car.
Yeah.
But what a great guy too. I mean, talk about someone that went from local Joe to explosion. I mean, he was, Reality Check was really just, on a Cincinnati network of Fox.
That was like the local Fox affiliate.
Yeah, he wasn't. It wasn't like he was on Fox News or anything like that. He was just a local guy, just like Jennifer Epstein or whatever. Here in Tampa, she was just a local guy doing his little reality bit, whatever, and all of a sudden blows up. And now he said the people 5 years ago in Hollywood that said we had nothing are calling us and asking us to come and provide content and start shows and stuff.
Begging.
And think that's only been 5 years, and his whole career is different. So we were talking about it, and he just said, one day I was there, the next day, boom. And talking about the availability now of having the in a case like his. I mean, he blew up because a bazillion people were posting all the crap. Every time he had a reality check, it hit Facebook, Twitter, whatever, and it got shared 1 million times. And everyone was sharing this stuff, and all of a sudden, I mean, when you can say, "I'm so big that I'm bigger than this network, I'm quitting."
Exactly.
You've arrived.
he outgrew the local affiliate that he was working for. He was now bigger than that local affiliate.
He was bigger than the Fox 13 affiliate.
Yeah.
I think it is up in Cincinnati.
Because he wasn't constrained to just the local broadcast area. He was spreading across the internet. And the kind of message that he's delivering is the one that's resonating with people. That's why people like Ben Swan and Adam Kokesh and Gary Johnson are gaining the momentum that they're gaining, because the message resonates.
Absolutely.
Really, I think a lot of it comes down to finding the people who are able to articulate the message in a way that it does resonate. Because a lot of times people don't articulate it well enough for the listeners to get it.
Right.
But like Ben Swan, the truth in media in and of, that's something people are clamoring for. I mean, they're starving for truth in media, because just about everybody of all political stripes recognizes that in the media is not telling us the truth, not holding people accountable. Of the media, of the press, is to hold our government accountable and tell us what's going on. That's why it's the only industry that's protected in the Constitution.
Correct.
Is to keep the government from infringing on that role. The reason that they're in there is to kind of be that fourth wall of government.
Sure.
that true representation of the people that is completely outside of government and can't be controlled by the government either. And the government has found ways to get around that.
Now it's just a propaganda machine.
Yeah.
What do we want to tell the people today?
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, the media is not telling people the truth, and is basically being controlled by the government. Everybody can watch the news and realize, well, that reporter just asked that politician a very straightforward question, and that politician completely avoided that answering the question. And the reporter didn't even acknowledge that.
Didn't even follow it up. He didn't even say, like, all right, well, let's get back to the original question.
Yeah. Now we happen to have here locally a few very good reporters in like Mike Deason and Noah
sure.
Pransky who will do that. You know, one of the big stories that even we talked about here on 1787 Network during the gubernatorial campaign was the whole fiasco with the sheriffs supporting him at campaign events, and it was Noah Pransky question about that, and he totally goes off on the scripted reply, and Noah's like, well, you didn't answer the question.
Yeah.
Did you know that these guys were on duty? So we happen to have a couple of those, but for the most part, the media doesn't do that. No. And every once in a while, get a journalist or somebody in the media who's honest about that and will explain it. And they'll come out and tell you. We do that to maintain access. Because these government officials, you know, if you're going to give me a hard time,
you're not invited.
Yeah, you're not going to get to come. I'm not going to do any more interviews with you. I'm not going to tell you anything. We're going to restrict your access to our events and to everything else, and you're not going to have the story.
You'll be there in the obscurity of local network forever.
Exactly. You know, but even that local network won't get it. You know, right. If Fox 13 holds a politician's feet to the fire and does it regularly, and the politicians get to the point where they understand a Fox 13 reporter shows up, they're going to, you know, make us answer questions, and they're going to make us tell the truth. Well, they're just going to stop letting Fox 13 show up. And that's the reality of it. And they'll admit that. Yeah.
Let me say, we don't have a spot for you.
So what Ben Swan is doing with his Truth in Media project, I mean, people really see the need for that. You know, on all sides of the political spectrum.
Sure.
They know we need that truth in media.
Sure, because, you know, even the far left complain about the complete misrepresentation by Fox, and then, you know, on the flip side, you know, the far right, you know, in all honesty, and they're right, but the whole MSNBC, CNN, all that is such a joke.
That's the thing, is the left is completely valid in saying that Fox is a propaganda machine for the right, and the right is completely valid in saying MSNBC is a propaganda machine for the left, and they'll argue with each other. You know, it's like the people on the left think that they're, you know, that they're pointing out something so important and that they're so righteous in talking about how bad Fox News is.
Sure.
But they completely don't acknowledge that MSNBC is the same thing on your side.
Absolutely.
You know, and vice versa for the right. You know, they worship at the altar of Fox News and denigrate MSNBC. And
you get very few on either network that genuinely just tell the truth.
Yeah.
You know, and won't mind lighting up anybody. You know, and that's why the only, like, when Judge Napolitano was on Fox for a long time, he was one of those guys. They've really gotten away from having those guys on there, unfortunately. I thought at one point when they had he's now one of the main guys on Fox. Was it Cavuto? Neil Cavuto. At one point they had him regulated to Fox Business. And at that point he was pretty straightforward. He was, you know, and he did a lot of defense of Judge Napolitano with that whole deal, and he did a lot of defense of the whole Ron Paul campaign and stuff like that, and even called out his own network a little bit for the way they reported it. And I haven't watched it in years now, so I don't know. I don't know necessarily. I know he's on the main network now, so he's probably toted that line.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm keeping my job. Thank you.
Yeah, he's not going to get to play ball unless he does what he's told to do. You know, but one of the things is we have a great example that you know gets out on the internet and people see it and people talk about it once in a while, but it doesn't get the amount of attention it should. And do you remember on Fox 13 here locally? It ran for a little while, but it didn't last long because it was ultimately killed by the network. Steve Wilson and Jane Aker were working on a series that talked about the health concerns related to Monsanto's growth hormone.
I remember this.
Okay.
I do remember this
Yeah.
because this is when Danielle really got into the whole Monsanto deal. Yeah.
So the growth hormone didn't comply with safety requirements, as highlighted by Canada Health. So they did a report on this. And mysteriously, the conclusion was deleted from the final published version of Monsanto's report. So Steve and Jane had done this entire series for the investigators on exposing what Monsanto's doing. And they get a fax from one of Monsanto's lawyers saying there will be consequences for Fox News if they proceed with the story. So then the general manager tries to bribe to not run the story, and they say, no, we're running with this story. This is important. It needs to get out. People need to know this. They ultimately got fired and they got silenced and they can't get a job again. And this
happened here in Tampa. Locally.
Yeah, this is here in Tampa. This was the local Fox 13 affiliate here in Tampa that did this. And when other journalists see that, that puts them in a position of,
oh, sure.
Well, what am I going to expose anybody powerful? It may be the right thing to do for everybody else, but it's going to destroy me
certainly not
and
for me.
destroy my family. And they end up having to make that decision.
If you're going to try to silence all media, to just make an example of a couple, because people quickly fall in line when it's their food and they're paying their bills with that job.
Exactly.
And which is sad because you eliminate for 100 years the whole idea of investigative reporters and they're from a regular news outlet source that's pretty much gone away. Now you have the investigative reporters are like, we called the city and there was too many roaches in that house. What are we doing about it? But there's no serious investigative reporting anymore. Because if you report the wrong thing, a wrong person, you're out. Especially if you're going as big as a Monsanto. Or if you're going, how many people have we seen not have their jobs after going after Rick Scott?
Exactly.
All of a sudden they're like, we would like to thank them for their service and their time. We wish them great luck in their future endeavors.
Right.
We've gone in different directions. But go ahead and try to expose Rick Scott if you're a local affiliate on a network, and you might have problems.
Yeah.
That shows what the investigative reporter Ben Swan is pretty much working for. It's wide open, and it uses the entire internet, and the internet's going to be the way that we're going to really get investigative reporting and real news, which is exactly why they want to regulate it.
Yeah.
There's no other reason that they want to regulate it. They're like, we have to protect people for the, no, you don't. You really, you just don't want the real news getting out there.
Yeah. Well, it's not as though the government can protect anyone on the internet, not even themselves, because I posted to the 1787 Network website a union representative for the government workers union said that hackers stole personnel data and social security numbers for every single federal employee.
I read that.
Every single one.
And you can't be shocked.
No.
It's the federal government. It almost comes to the point where, and we've had this conversation with all of us. There is absolutely, for a long time, I preached the whole the government is just absolutely stupid. It can't do nothing right. It's completely inept in whatever it does because there's so many levels of bureaucracy. It ends up being absolutely stupid. And in the last, I would say, year and a half, I think I've completely changed. Our government is not stupid, and our government is not inept. the government is highly intelligent, and it is very, very inept. It is just simply evil. There's no way you could be so stupid as to allow hackers to get into the U.S. federal government's employee files for all of them, unless you were just like, you know what, we want to leave it open. You're the freaking federal United States. You have the CIA, the most secretive entity on the planet, and you don't have a firewall.
Well, I don't. Ooh, there. I think I found.
You
What
fix
gets my
something.
mic working?
If you rub it the right way, it also likes you.
Yeah, exactly. Rub it three times, and I get a wish. I wish my mic worked. But yeah, the thing is, I wouldn't say that this is an instance of the government is evil. Really, this is an instance of the government is inept. Assumed that they could, mitigate the risk in a place where they couldn't. I mean, it's assumed, or at least the official story is that this came out of China. That this cyber attack that resulted in this came out of China, and I have to take their word for it at this point because I have no evidence otherwise.
Sure.
And it's totally believable because China has the resources to do that.
And they've been trying.
Yeah, I mean,
We know they've been trying.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a different kind of country. In the United States, we can't necessarily direct things the way they do over there because it's far more authoritarian.
Have a couple of hackers and be like, "Hey, you're in this room. Figure it out.
Yeah,
or we'll shoot you."
Yeah, exactly. They can fill a room full of hackers, and if they don't do it, then they kill them and bring in a new room. So I have no reason to not believe that this was China that did it, and I have no reason to believe that China wouldn't want to do this. So once we put all that information on those servers, we should have immediately been operating under the assumption that someone's going to try and get into this information. And if you have, it's the struggle of security in any regard, but certainly in cyberspace. If you're going to have access, then you've created a portal for nefarious access.
Sure.
I mean, if you want to be completely 100% secure in your house, you've got to get rid of the doors and the windows. But then there's no way for you to get out and no way for you to get in. So you have to have doors and windows. Same thing with for that information to travel in and out on the internet, you have to have a portal for that to happen. Well, you can secure that portal to the best of your ability, but the reason why criminals are always at least one step ahead of law enforcement is because that's what they do. They are
professionals.
Yeah, they are professionals. This is what they focus on. This is what their job is, to be one step ahead of the security measures and figure out how to circumvent whatever security measures are out there. You create any kind of security system, it's only going to be perfect for so long until somebody figures out a way around it.
Well, it's generally the person that created the security system.
Yeah,
or an employee or something like that.
Yeah, either somebody who was involved in it and so to speak, or somebody who has the same level of skill on the other side of the playing field.
Right. The best lock picker is a locksmith. And that's why like the like McAfee and all these antivirus companies, they like go find criminals and hire them.
Yeah,
beat our stuff.
Exactly. They go out and recruit the black hat hackers that are breaking through firewalls and destroying their security systems and writing viruses that completely are undetected by their virus
Come
scans.
make honest money for us. We'll pay you well.
Exactly. We'll pay you more money or as much money as you're making on the black market, and you don't have to look over your shoulder every day.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, so
Yes,
people
sir,
will
I'll
take that
it.
deal, but then there's always somebody new coming up willing to take that work on the black market.
Sure.
Part of the problem is how many
resume.
yeah, and how many of these viruses and security hacks have come up, and it turns out that it's some 16-year-old in Germany that's bored and really skilled on a computer, and he did it just to see if he could do it, and he did.
Well, that's a scary proposition.
Well, I mean, it happens. It happens all the time. I forget the name of that last big virus scare that came through. That's exactly what it was. It was a 16-year-old German kid that is a complete savant on computers, and he was bored and just wanted to see if he could do it. And he did, and it worked, and it was shutting down computer systems and compromising data all over the world. And he did it to entertain himself.
Microsoft's hiring that guy. I mean, I would if I would quickly. 16 years old, his upside is still to come.
Oh yeah,
that's a scary proposition, because I think if that could happen, skilled technician, could implode everything. Well, at the behest of a gun at your head in China, you could get into see, how does our federal government have all federal employees on one? You would think it would be broken into multiple.
Well,
and why you would leave it it's like not even having the door in your house at that point. It's like, hey, there's one door and we put all our valuables right in front of it.
Yeah, well, it's that putting all your eggs in one basket. Everything was available on the internet. There was an internet access portal somewhere to this data, and the hackers found a way into it. And as soon as they got through that door, just like a burglar, they get through the locks in the security system on your door. Once they're in, they're in. They can grab whatever they want.
But what's the benefit, though? This is probably what I never understood about all these hackers and stuff. Now, I get if you're going and you're getting people's, but even if you're going and getting people's like bank account numbers, there's not a lot you can do with it unless you have the passwords and stuff. And then, I guess if you're good, you can probably figure out what people's passwords and stuff are. But what benefit do you get with the employee files from the federal government? Well, or is it just hey, we can do this?
Well, there's that. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this, and depending on who's doing it, they may have different goals. A lot of times you get these like the Russian mafia, they have hacker units that are trying to steal personal information. You've got the Nigerian prince, faction, these people in Africa that are trying to do nefarious things on the internet. And, whether it's just all of this personal information to somebody else that's in this black market of hacked information, who's then going to steal the identities of the people on these lists, or as many of them as they can, or whether, a state-sponsored event like this, where China is stealing all the government employee information. Who knows what their intentions are with it? Maybe they're looking for people that they can recruit in some sort of espionage role. Maybe they're looking at people that they can impersonate for espionage purposes. Maybe they're looking at the people that they need to kind of figure out the organizational structure and who they need to compromise to get further in with whatever they're trying to do. I mean, there's so many. Who knows what their intentions are?
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things that they could be potentially doing with this, and we have no idea what they want to do with it, but they've got it now.
And we kind of just left that door wide open.
Yeah, and
there's absolutely, see, which is why I would go back to knowing what's out there. And we all know about hackers, and we all know that these other countries are trying to, it's been fully documented. We've caught them. Why would you leave something so easily attainable? I don't know.
Well, I'm not going to assume that it was easily. I'm going to assume that the government put every encryption service and every level of security that they could to protect this data, but it still wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Because, again, all of that security can ultimately be compromised by someone who has the persistence and willingness and skill to do so. I mean, you hear it all the time. I mean, to some degree, it's cliche, but never give up. If you want to accomplish a goal, just don't give up.
Right.
And that's I can't tell you how long it took for whoever it was that's behind this to actually succeed and get that data. But whether it took them 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 years, it doesn't matter. If they have the resources to do it and don't give up until they get it, they're gonna get it.
Right.
No matter what the government put up to stop them.
As corrupt as our government, how come we don't have those people on our side then?
because they don't have a gun to their head.
So because for us it's illegal to go get them with a gun.
Yeah, I mean, China has mobile execution trucks. I mean, they have trucks with and electric chairs and rifles in them that their sole purpose is to execute dissenters.
This is true. Well, I mean, I guess when you run over a kid with a tank.
Yeah, I mean, it's a completely different world. So, people are coerced to a much greater degree there than they are here. Here, we just indoctrinate them and brainwash them to the point where they do it willingly. We don't need the gun.
You would think that as corrupt and dishonest as our government is, they would just be like, hey, we have tons of money. Fight this. Make this not happen. In other words, saying that a couple of smart kids in China or Germany at the end of a gun are smarter than what we have here in this country, giving them lots of money.
Well, I mean, there's.
Well, I guess the incentive is different.
I don't think it's just smarter. I mean, like, we take breaks, we take vacations.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah.
We're allowed to go pee.
So you're saying their work ethic is different?
Well, not just the work ethic,
which I agree with,
and it's not necessarily even a voluntary work ethic. Again, a lot of these people have a gun to their head,
right,
or a gun to their family's head. Mm-hmm.
The motivation is different with gun or money.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us, will do a lot of things to get paid, but at some point there's a line we won't cross.
But you'll cross that line if there's a gun to your head, or if there's a gun to your family's head, your kids, or something like that.
Exactly.
Sure.
Your ethics and your principles really start getting compromised when the people that are most important to you, when their lives are on the line.
Sure.
And it's a completely different conversation than how much can I to get you to do this.
This is true.
Yeah. So it's just funny though, the way that, kind of bringing this back around, everything gets centralized, and we think that we can kind of mitigate our risk, but then the risk is also now centralized. So it may be nice and easy for all the government agencies to access this data at will, but it also created this huge risk. And now all of that data that used to be protected is now out there, and who knows where. Once it's been accessed, pulled from those servers, if the Chinese did it, then the Chinese now have it. It could be in so many hands by now. It could be sold to the Russians. It could be sold to different Middle Eastern countries. Could be sold to not even nations, but organizations like ISIS, or Al Qaeda, or whatever their current iteration's name is. I mean, there are so many different things that can be done with this data. That's the thing. China may have just did it to see if they could do it. And once they got it, they're like, well, we have no plans with this information. There's nothing we want to do with it. So here, let's just sell it to the Nigerian prince so we can spam them all and see how much money he can get out of it.
Yes. A friend of mine, told me to contact you. He has $4 in a bank account that I can't get out, and he is under distress and he might die any moment. I need your help. What's your bank account number? I'll route you this money.
It's ridiculous. I can't believe people do things, but the reason they do is, I mean, we have a heart in this country. We have this empathy and this desire to help people. And there are people like me. I get that. I want to help people, but I get that email and I see it exactly for what it is. I'm like, you're totally trying to scam me.
See, it's new now. I fell for it. Well, I didn't fall for it. I ran the course until I finally figured out what it was. If I see an email like that, I would just delete it out. It goes right in the spam. A few months back, I got a letter in the mail, and postage was from Spain. Like, I had the Spain postage. It wasn't come from the U.S. It came from Spain. And I opened it, and it was an attorney in Madrid that a family member of mine had passed away. And they were looking for kin. So it said Meadowcroft on it. This guy, David Meadowcroft, he was a kind. He worked with like rocks and like a geologist. But it was a different name. Like he was a something geologist. And it was, this is the person. Is this person related to you? This person has money that in a bank account here in Madrid that's going to be turned over to the state treasury, unless we find someone that is kin. So they were like going through through the lines or making it appear they're going through the bloodlines. And the other thing that clued me in, it wasn't like it was $400 million. They're like, this guy has like, $5,432,088. So it wasn't like this is like a huge, you're going to get half of 400 million. You're going to, no, this guy only had like $5 million in this deposit. And for someone who's a, paid geophysicist, that could be feasible.
Right.
Especially in Europe. So I ran this thing through its course, and we started going through the bloodline, and we found out that there is this person did exist, and this person could have been related to us because it's in the lines of people that were in, because we tracked back to like the 1550s, and then the main group of our family came from England in the early 1800s, but they all came between like 1780 and 1825, and they were all settled in the Northeast. It was like Massachusetts or Pennsylvania. Well, apparently this guy came from the Pennsylvania line of my family. And at the end of it, guy got persistent, like urgent response needed, and when I wouldn't respond with anything besides, well, I need to know more of the bloodline. So I told him, I don't care about the money. I care about the research. So we need to find out where the blood, and then finally the email just stopped. Because I was like emailing this guy back and forth for 6-8 weeks, and all of a sudden it just like stopped. There's no.
Yeah.
I think he kind of like, I can't run this anymore. There's no more proof I can substantiate this claim. So it's not even the crazy scams anymore. Now this was a legitimate one. This guy knew my name, and he knew bloodlines of like people that, he said that he went to Pennsylvania. This guy was born in Pennsylvania, so he had to have known.
Well, this is exactly what happens with that data. And I'll guarantee you that the reason that happened is at some point your personal data was compromised, whether it was in a Target hack, whether because you shopped at Target. You remember when that happened?
Yeah,
Home Depot got hacked. So many people have been
I was
hacked.
at both of those.
Yeah. So, your personal information is out there in so many places that it could have been compromised probably 25 different times.
So this person just goes to Ancestry.com and does it for all the work for you?
Well, not even necessarily that. They buy these lists of all this compromised information, and they kind of do this spray and pray marketing with it. And they take this list and they send out this email or the mailer to everybody on this list and see who bites.
Right.
And you bid. So and they try and reel you in. Now a smart person, eventually catches on to this like you did, and you're like, wait, things aren't adding up. Okay, I think this is a scam, and it was. But all they care about is that handful of people that never realize that it's a scam, that have that heart of gold, that want to help somebody.
Sure.
And that heart gives them rose-colored glasses that blinds them to what's really going on. And
what's the target? What's the goal? What do you gain?
Money.
From who?
From these people. When you're able to siphon $80,000 out of one person, and you actually have success with 250 people out of the 300,000 that you bought in these lists. There's
that's a really, really, really high percentage.
There's I'm sure the percentage is not nearly that high. I'm just kind of throwing out numbers to kind
great
of
advertising campaign right there. But I can't get more than like 2%.
But that's the thing. There is an incentive for these people to do this.
Sure.
And there is
like
money to be made.
Upfront cost, though. God, this was a letter. I even found the attorney. Now, I don't know if that attorney actually sent me the stuff or someone acting like him sent me the stuff. Could have been. But I found him on like LinkedIn. I'm like attorney. I'm looking up on the internet all of attorneys in Madrid and everything. But the cost of making all these mailers individualizing them. So it can't be just like a blank mailer. I mean, this guy had names of people, my name, people in my family's name, and then postage from Madrid can't be cheap if you're sending 500,000 of those things over.
Right.
I was like, so I mean, you better hope that at least the person you get has more than like $300 in their bank account.
Well, that's the thing. They don't care about the $300 person because they're going to keep getting that money.
They can finally get someone that has, hey, I got 150,000 in here that I'm willing.
Yeah, and they don't just hit you up for $150,000 to start with. They say, oh, well, we need $10,000 or we need $5,000, to file the court papers or whatever, right. And they give you a story and a reasonable amount of money, and so you send them that money and it just becomes this long chain of, well, we need another 3,000. We need and I need you to deposit this check into your bank account and send me, I'm going to send you a $30,000 check. You send me a $20,000 check that they sent you ends up, but you already sent out your $20,000. It starts adding up. Next thing you know, your life saving is drained. You've given these people $150,000, and no one can prosecute them because they don't exist. They can't be found. And when they ultimately are found, they're out of any jurisdiction of any law enforcement that has laws on these books. That's why a lot of this stuff originates in places like Nigeria, all over West Africa, because there's just no structure of law enforcement or anything to prevent these people. Right. And even if they get caught, there's no law against it. And the places where they enact the law, well, there's no law enforcement that can actually track these people down. You may have 2 people in the whole country that deal with this kind of crime, right. And they can't do anything about it.
By the time it gets tracked, they're like moved.
Yeah. They find one person and there's already 8 more operating. And by the time they find another one, there's 16 more, and it just grows exponentially, and they can't stop it. Well, I mean, first you have to have a certain moral flexibility.
I'm flexible. I'm just saying. I'm saying, how do you get, like, hey, we're looking for someone that can scam, 500,000 people in the United States. Is this like a Monster.com ad? I mean, how do you find? How do you get this job? How do you apply for this job with this organization?
Well, that's the other thing. When you're talking about countries like this, jobs are scarce, and they'll pretty much take any job they can get.
True.
And they're
especially if it's at the behest of the government.
Yeah,
if that's the case in China, that they're
Yeah, when you're picking through garbage bins for your next meal and somebody offers you a job, you probably aren't going to delve into the complexities of its legality.
Well, especially if there is none, especially if you're in the side of Nigeria, I mean, there probably is no legalities.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's my understanding that now that are run like this are illegal in Nigeria. It's just they don't have the structure to be able to fight it. Right. You've got just a few investigators that even look into this. Yeah, and I mean, it's whether it's government in chaos or whether it's just ineptitude or a lack of funding and a lack of direction. I mean, there's a lot of problems in places like that they have to deal with. And certainly, when you've got people starving in the streets or a warlord out in the woods
shooting up schools and stuff.
Yeah, he's raiding villages and stuff. I mean, these are bigger problems than this fly-by-night telemarketing firm that's scamming Americans.
This is true.
So I mean, they have the world's a mess. There are people that have no ethics and no morals, and there are people that are willing to scam others and exert force and steal money. And we just kind of got to deal with it as best we can. I don't see all of that going away anytime soon.
But does that, bringing this full circle, does that give our government the right to regulate our internet using this whole scenario is what they're saying, that we have to protect American citizens from this type of all this chaos. So we need to regulate the internet. By doing so, though, we also regulate what can be said and what can be out there, and it eliminates a guy like Ben Swan from doing what he's doing. It eliminates those real, true investigative reporters, those real, true journalists that are, asking the hard questions and not allowing, not giving, politicians and governments or even big businesses a pass.
Right. Well, I think it's where we as libertarians are important, and we take that libertarian position. And you guys can't even protect your own data. I don't trust you to protect mine. I don't
true.
think that you can control the internet. I don't think you can regulate the internet. The only thing you can do is control it for your own ends and censor people that are a problem for you. And so, no, I reject your premise that you can protect us or that you can control the internet. It's really like trying to control the sky.
Yes.
Because the internet, even though it may be U.S. military research that started it, it is not owned by the U.S. military. The internet is this kind of amorphous entity that is created by computers all over the globe communicating with each other.
Right.
And even if you shut down every computer in the United States, the internet is not going away.
Correct.
And even if it creates a problem for the internet, it can be fixed.
Sure.
Things might slow down and things might, be a problem for a little while, but we're going to fix it. Conversely, you go the other way and you shut down every computer outside of the United States, we're still going to have an internet. I mean, this is what China does, and this is what these authoritarian countries do. They basically shut off access to the computers outside their country to censor, what people are able to see and do. So you can control these populations. This is what China does. This is what
during all the uprisings and stuff, they shut off the internet, and Egypt, that had same thing happen.
And ultimately it doesn't work because people find ways around it.
Sure.
It's like, again, trying to regulate the sky. How are you going to do that?
It's worked in Cuba, though. It's worked in Cuba.
Well, it's funny the way that things ultimately work. I mean, Cuba, you can almost say that it's worked in Cuba because we've helped them.
Yeah, I have a handful of Cubans that work for me, and Rafael was telling me they finally allowed to go on the internet, and I think it's for like 4 hours on the internet, it's like $8.
Yeah.
So like nobody goes on the internet. You're allowed, you just have to pay, and no one doesn't.
And the thing is, it's kind of our fault because the U.S. sanctions and the prevention of exchange with Cubans.
Sure.
It puts that in the hands of, ultimately, the result is that only the Cuban government can create an internet for these people. So the internet that they get becomes this state-sponsored, internet. Mm-hmm. But if we didn't have these sanctions on Cubans where Americans can't go to Cuba and take a bunch of computer parts with them and build servers and build an infrastructure,
sure.
With the Cubans to create an internet doesn't get controlled by the Cuban government, so really it's our fault. The reason the Cuban government is able to control the Cuban people and the Cuban internet like that is because we have not allowed anybody, including ourselves, to go in and change it.
Even our major corporations.
Yeah.
I mean, Google can't go there. No, nobody can go there.
And that's why in places where the is as or more restrictive, they still have an internet structure because
we still do business with them.
We still do business with them.
We'll still do business with Iran, but we won't do business with Cuba.
Exactly.
How does that work?
We'll still do business with China.
Yeah.
We still do. So China are the ones who hacked all this information and are leaking it out, yet they're still our friends, and we're going to have huge trade deals with them?
It's totally different.
Well,
they have billions of peoples that are buying our crap.
They got nuclear bombs. That's the difference.
Well, that too. Cuba doesn't have nuclear weapons that we know of.
Yeah, it's why we didn't charge right into Pakistan going after Osama bin Laden. Pakistan has nuclear warheads, and they have no problem with using them.
Yeah, Pakistan's kind of crazy. They don't have stuff up. China, on the other hand, might think twice, at least.
I think China, I've said this since I was a China realized a long time ago that they're not going to conquer the United States and the Western world militarily, right. So they're going to do it economically, and they're succeeding.
Absolutely, they just figure we'll just get rich off these guys. We can make everything for pennies, and they're going to buy all our stuff and make us very wealthy.
Yeah.
And we're going to loan them money, and they're going to still give us foreign aid.
I mean, it's clear to me that everything that China does is to subvert our economy and
Sure.
to weaken us and to put themselves in a more powerful position economically. And it's coming to a head. It's getting to the point where they're going to take over the top of the heap.
Well, they're already like trying to move off the U.S. dollar and trying to convince Russia to move off.
Well, they have in a lot of ways. I mean, I think it was 2011 when China and Russia made a deal where they're going to start trading with each other in their own currencies.
Yep.
You know, so they may trade with other nations in the U.S. dollar, but with each other they trade in Chinese yen and what is it, the ruble?
The ruble, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they've already dropped the dollar between each other, and now they're trying to expand that. You know, and Russia wants to get other countries to trade with them in the
Sure.
in the ruble, and you know, China wants other countries to trade with them with their yen, and if they're successful in that campaign, I mean, the fact that they're trading with each other,
means
dollar
they're successful.
already is bad enough. But if they get other countries on board with what they're doing, you know, it's going to be a problem for us.
Will that ever be a possibility, knowing that we have the biggest guns? We have more weapons than anyone, and we'll force you. If you're going to start pulling that, we might have to go to war, and no one wants to go to war with the biggest dog on the block. Or is it benefit us to have this whole thing implode? Because once it implodes, it's like going bankrupt. You know, you're just like, all right, we'll wash it clean, start over. You know, there's just no more money. It hits rock bottom, and the only way you can hitting rock bottom is you go straight up. And maybe we'll actually pull ourselves out of this, mediocrity of poorness, the serfdom that, just maintains. Like it never, like we're pulling out of the recession, but nobody's pulling out of the recession. It just stays terrible.
Well, it's hard to say. There are a lot of people out there, especially in the liberty movement, that want to try and predict a collapse, and the collapse is coming, and it could be in 3 days, it could be in 3 months, it could be in 3 years, but the collapse is coming. I really don't like being that kind of person, the fear mongering and all that. It's possible that it could happen. Maybe we get a surge in libertarianism, and we're able to change the paradigm. Who knows? I don't want to predict that everything's going to collapse and that it's all bad, and who knows?
So you're not prepping.
I don't know. I mean, I prep to some degree. Quite frankly, if you live in Florida and you're not prepped to some degree, then you're an idiot.
This is true.
Between the hurricanes and the flooding and things like that, if you're not prepared for at least 3 days to be without power, without water, if you're not prepared that way, you're just.
Right.
I don't even know what to say, but it's probably not going to be a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm probably not going to have a good thing to say about you.
When that power goes out.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to do Brandon Jones from the Global Dispatch and see what he's got to say about what's happened this week. You're listening to the 1787 Network.
Hi, this is Gary Johnson, and you're listening to the 1787 Radio Network.
Join with libertarians from across the Sunshine State as we gather for the 2015 Libertarian Party of Florida State Convention, scheduled for June 5th through the 7th. The LPF State Convention will take place at the Quality Inn & Suites Conference Center in historic Newport Richey, Florida. Gary Johnson is the keynote speaker for the convention. Other speakers in attendance include Ben Swan, Adam Kokesh, Tony Stiles, and more. For more information, visit the website at lpf2015.com. Once again, the website address is lpf2015.com.
Liberty starts with a like. Facebook.com/Liberty Underground.
If you received a ticket in Florida, contact Oropesa Law Offices, 800-774-9883 or tacklemyticket.com. Attorney Oropesa understands the stress associated with being charged with a traffic ticket. In many non-criminal ticket cases, there may be no court appearance, no points, and no traffic school. Attorney Oropesa handles criminal violations, DUI, and license suspension matters. Don't face these serious legal matters alone. Initial consultation is free. Call now and you will be advised about any potential defense, constitutional rights violations, the possibility of having your driving privileges restored, or preventing a suspension from going into effect. If you've been classified as a habitual traffic offender, have a driver's license suspension matter, or a pending DUI case, call Oropesa Law Offices now so you can be advised about your particular case. Call 1-800-774-9883 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or visit tacklemyticket.com. Main office in Pinellas County and serving all of the Tampa Bay area. Find out more at tacklemyticket.com. Mention Liberty Underground and get 25% off.
You know Going Postal offers shipping with UPS, FedEx, and DHL International, and they're a full-service post office. And Going Postal is not just your one-stop shop for shipping. They offer copying, laminating, faxing, packaging, and they even have a notary public service. Visit our friends at Going Postal at the following convenient locations: Palm Harbor at the corner of Tampa Road and County Road 1 in the Sweet Bay Plaza, St. Pete on 66th Street just south of Tyrone Boulevard near Publix, and be sure to visit their newest location at 35595 US 19 North at Alderman Road next to Publix in Palm Harbor.
When the unthinkable happens, it doesn't matter in 15 minutes. It doesn't matter if your neighbor has the same insurance you do. In this moment, what matters is the quality of your independent agent and the company that stands behind them. Auto Owners Insurance has been recognized as highest in customer satisfaction with the auto insurance claims experience by J.D. Power and Associates. For award information, go to jdpower.com. Call Row Insurance in Newport Richey today at 727-376-0030.
And we're back on the Liberty Underground show. Today it's me and James. No Alex today. But let me go ahead and try and get Brandon on the phone here. And once I get Brandon on the phone here, we'll go ahead and do our segment with him. Oh, sounds
Brandon's
like
already logging in.
here he comes.
God, he's so timely.
I know. Brandon, you there?
Yes, sir.
Hey, good to hear from you. How you doing today?
Oh, very blessed. How are things?
Oh, excellent. Feeling great coming out of convention. So what's going on in the world with the Global Dispatch?
I tell you, it's probably our biggest feeling right now is probably just the still some fallout from the hacking. The hacking that actually took place back in December. It wasn't even acknowledged until April, and we have 4 million federal employees' personal information, and now we're finding out that their social security numbers were never ever encrypted, and just the outrage from the Harry Reid even is turned on that, Susan Collins. So people are just kind of like, what on earth is going on? Here we are spending billions upon billions, hand over fist of mountains of money to monitor American phone calls, emails through the NSA program, and we don't even have our own federal employees' personal data locked down.
Yeah, it's a travesty. It really is. I cannot believe that they want us to give them all of our personal data, all of our health information under the Affordable Care Act, and that's going to be safe. I mean, and so Chinese hackers are going to know the results of our colonoscopies and everything.
Well, no,
and obviously, with you talk about federal employees, you're talking about possibly even if it was just lower level staffers of congressmen. You're talking about having their personal address, social security number. I mean, all sorts of different things here that possibly have leaked out. At this point, the incompetence is so great. I'm not sure how you could even have faith that they even know what got out. If they have faith to know what really was breached at this point.
Oh, exactly. Who knows how far that went? Who knows how far down the rabbit hole these hackers got in?
Oh, jeez.
So that's probably our biggest story right now. Obviously, ISIS is still in the news. You've got a lot of different things that are going on. You can go to the actual to see some of the different stories that are there, and the different dynamics.
Awesome. So what else has happened in the world in the world this week? Because we've been kind of occupied here with the things we've been doing. So what are the biggest stories that you've had besides the hack, obviously?
Yeah. Islamic State is still rolling through. They're in Syria and Iraq. They're converting one of the largest, most prominent churches into a mosque for the jihadists, and that has really kind of created a little bit of a firestorm through even people that are not Christian. Even Islamic leadership is kind of like, wait a minute, whoa, now we've gone too far, because the pendulum to them, because they don't look at Christians in a positive light, but that kind of opens the door to, what if Christians want to take ownership of a mosque and they want to turn it into a church? We would be outraged. So that actually has been kind of an interesting hot point, which I really would not have foreseen. But it's getting a lot of play overseas as far as, how far Islamic State has gone, how this caliphate, if you will, is progressing so rapidly. Obviously, I think it came out over the last couple of weeks how much of U.S. weaponry, the Humvees, the artillery, grenade launchers these people have and have acquired by conquering different cities. They have caches of incredibly dangerous weapons, and that this is becoming an exponential, an avalanche, if you will, coming down the mountain for these Islamic regimes that are really, I don't want to say they're afraid, but they're definitely having a increased elevated awareness now, I think, over the last few weeks that they haven't really expressed in the months in the past.
Well, that we're reaching a tipping point here for the rest of the world? Because it seems to me like a lot of people are of the opinion that, the United States kind of created this problem. We've armed ISIS. We created the power vacuum in the Middle East that allowed them to flourish. So it's kind of our baby to deal with. But it's because we're not really dealing with it well, and they are doing this. They are taking more swaths of land. They're, obviously trying to take over holy sites. Do you think that we're kind of reaching a tipping point where other nations are going to get involved and either like take sides with them or get into some sort of conflict with them?
Well, I think we've seen that play out a little bit. I mean, we see with Britain, they're cutting back on defense. They're going to be a less and less player in a lot of this when it comes to war fatigue. United Kingdom is definitely at the top of that list. We're seeing a shift. I think we saw a shift with Yemen, when it comes to the divisions of, Shiite versus Sunni. So you saw Saudis actually talking with the Israelis about making sure these Shiites that are in Yemen don't gain more power and more control. So I still think those divisions still have to watch out. The real tipping point really may be in Iraq and Syria. If they cannot start to decide who's going to take some ownership of this, who's going to take some leadership of this and try to make sure they get control, then America's role in this will really, really kind of have to come to a tipping point, as you say, because Iraq's military that we spent, a decade training, arming, raising up, basically have run from the hills. They're non-existent. The numbers that we have, the millions of people that we allegedly trained and empowered now are non-existent. They're rolling over, they're running away, they're possibly even joining ISIS themselves. Then, of course, in Syria, how far does this get before Assad himself says, listen, I don't care what you people say, I'm going to deal with these people. They're way too dangerous. They're way, and he's Shiite, so these are Sunnis. So it's not like he's going to sit around and sit on his hands and wait for this power to overthrow his government. If they try to proceed further into Damascus or towards that region, they expect some response from him, and that, of course, will evoke response from the Iranians and the Russians accordingly. And then you have a different kind of quagmire. And this administration has just very passive, very we'll fly drones over it, we'll drop a few bombs, and that's not who Islamic State is. They're way smarter than that. And this administration still acts like they have answers and know what they're doing, and it makes no sense when it comes to what we're seeing on the ground.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't seem like the Obama administration really has a grasp on the gravity of this situation. You're absolutely right there. And I think it's apparent to the rest of the world.
Oh, absolutely. I would say give credit to George Bush, at least. If you're going to do something so egregious as to invade another country, at least go all the way. So at least he like went in with everybody and just, this whole idea that you can drop a couple bombs from some drones and think that you're gonna stop, a couple 1,000-year holy war. That's ridiculous. I mean, you're not gonna be able to kill everyone unless you're gonna have people on the ground doing the killing, and
And unfortunately, we know that the truth is that any military action, any sustained military action that's going to be victorious, you can't simply do it from the air. You have to on the ground
Sure.
in some form or fashion. And now they're talking about sending 450 troops over there. Like that's going to be enough? I think ISIS recruits more than that on Twitter daily.
Well, and that's where the Iraqi forces have failed whatever, fictitious plan they may have actually thought was going to manifest itself. That the Iraqis would be able to create security forces and stand up to these folks, and that has just not been the case. And then, just to further elaborate on your original question, the third leg of all this, of course, is Israel. And right now we're seeing Hamas instigating Israel back into conflict. They've been launching missiles now for increasingly over the last week and a half or so, and Netanyahu actually has come out publicly and said, where are you, media? Picking the fight again. Here we are again. My people are being endangered, and you're not even reporting that they're doing anything. And I think that the role of Hamas, there's been some reports that these are ISIS-related and not Hamas, but every legitimate source is saying, no, this is still just Hamas being funded through Iran as usual and that kind of thing. So this entire region is still very much on fire, doesn't show any sign of getting organized or quieting down, which of course will feed right into the political rhetoric that we'll hear through campaigns and through these candidates.
Well, isn't it safe to say, though, that to some degree ISIS and Hamas have similar goals, and that even if they aren't yet, that at some point they are going to align themselves together kind of towards this common goal? Because obviously Hamas is not happy with the existence of the State of Israel. And I don't think the existence of a State of Israel really plays well into ISIS's plans, whatever they happen to be. So,
well, ISIS again defines themselves as Islamic State. So it's Islamic State of Syria and Iraq, or Iraq and Syria rather. So to form an Islamic State, to be a caliphate, they are actually more geographically minded. They're actually into conquering cities, spreading their geography, their control. You conform to Sharia law, you convert or die, that kind of thing. The Hamas battle and the conflict that the Iranians have worked through the Shiites towards Israel more directly is more of just the anti-Semitism, the outright hatred of Israel, Jews, and the existence of the Israeli state and control of Jerusalem. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that right now they're not on the similar path to sort of kind of come together and be unified. It's similar to how when Al Qaeda was, the first identified, Sunni terrorist group that we had way back. Their motives didn't really cross paths with the same motives of Saddam Hussein. Neither, I think, is a friend of the United States, but both had a different approach to how they wanted to thumb their nose or bring down America in a different way. So that I just don't want to try to say that they're going to be partners and they're going to align, nor do I want to say it won't happen. It's just that they don't seem to be on the similar paths for that to fall into place.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's something that we should probably keep an eye out for, though, because if ISIS does continue, if they get control geographically to a degree that they're looking for, I don't think they're going to stop. I think they're ultimately going to look to expand that even further. Right now, they're looking at Syria and Iraq, but say they get Syria and Iraq under their control, is it going to stop there, or are they going to try and put the entire Middle East under this caliphate?
Well, they'll definitely want to put the entire Middle East. I believe they're in Iraq, and they're spreading very rapidly through Iraq. They formed there. They've become the new version of what was Al-Qaeda. Then I also believe that Syria, which is, the Shiite group as well, so they want to overthrow that. It was the weaker of the group in that general region, and that's where al-Nusra was. So these Sunni faction militants have a background and a long history in the countries that they're trying to overthrow. Syria being probably the biggest pivot point, because if they start to gain more and more control of Syria, it really starts to draw more big nations. That's where you have the partnership with Iran and Russia. So if you reflect back to whenever we had the alleged biological weapon scare from Assad, it was the Iranians and Russians that were there standing next to him. It was the Russian Navy that responded to basically call off of the Obama administration's big naval ambitions and that kind of thing. So that's why these two are so key. Now, if they were able to gain control of one or both of those, there's no reason to believe they won't continue to spread, especially with Iraq. They will spread to Afghanistan. You'll see some different partnerships, I believe, with some groups that are already in Pakistan, as well as all through Africa. And these are groups that in Africa, they have aspirations to do what ISIS is doing, but they haven't had the resources. We haven't put the weapons cache, made it accessible for them to gain that kind of power, and they don't have areas that they can conquer and gain that sort of military force. So the local regimes, while they barely have control of their countries, whatever that may be, don't really have an uprising on the magnitude that we're seeing in Iraq or Syria.
Well, if you're willing to give your opinion on this, Brandon, and I'll understand if you decline, but what do you think America's role in all of that is? Do you think we should get more involved? Do you think we should kind of see this play out a little further before we make a decision? What do you think we should do?
Well, the number one thing, again, let's wave the magic wand and I get to play president or run for candidate and have that kind of power and authority. The number one thing I tell you is my foreign policy is going to be, we want to do what's in America's best interest. I truly believe it is a global market, a global world. The barriers have come down. We can't, whether we like it or not, because I don't like it, I would prefer us to be a lot more sovereign and stay more to ourselves, allow these countries to stay more sovereign. But the biggest thing that has totally fallen to the wayside after the Bush administration, during the Obama term, is we don't even involve or discuss what these countries want us to do. I'm not saying that Assad has to be our friend, but if Assad doesn't want us dealing with these people in Syria, then we don't need to be in there dealing with people in Syria. If the people of Iraq and the leadership of Iraq doesn't want us in there and trying to help them quarantine this or whatever, then we're not going to. But at the same time, if we have bases and embassies, you know what? Those are going to be well protected. Those are going to be well taken care of. And if we have interests, we have American companies, we have American money and things that we are banking on being secured and safe, then we'll have our efforts to make sure those are done. But we're not going to be arming the latest government of Egypt with F-16s and tanks, not knowing if it's even a stable regime, who's in charge of the regime, never putting a face with it. We don't know their religious alliances, their political alliances. And if you're going to treat people badly, you're going to behave the way some of these countries have, I wouldn't do business with you. I'm not going to be involved with you. We have bigger problems here at home we can spend our money on. So I'm not the purist libertarian that wants to cut ties and bring everybody home, but I also think we don't use an ounce of common sense and actual practical diplomacy when it comes to these things. We just kind of run at it. We throw a bunch of bombs. We do whatever. Things fall into the enemy's hands. We don't even acknowledge that happened. These kinds of things. So that would kind of be just a general overview of my approach. Obviously, I think there's a country-by-country discussion that we could have, or there's leader-by-leader discussion that we could have. How you deal with Putin is not how you deal with Assad, who is not how you deal to the leadership that's in South America, for instance. It's just you have to take every case by case.
Absolutely, and that's why I wanted to ask you, because I know that we tend to be some flaming libertarians on this show, and I know that you're not quite as hardcore on the libertarian spectrum as we are. So I like to hear your thoughts on that as well, because I know you're not near the authoritarian that the Democrats and the Republicans are, but you're not quite as far down the libertarian spectrum as we are. So it's nice to get your thought on that.
Where my libertarianism would probably come to the surface is because I know these people. That would be where I would start. What I can tell you is the burnt rather quickly. So where I can say I would reach out to, let's say, Egypt, we'd have a discussion or whatever. When you start to put Muslim Brotherhood in charge and you're executing a third of your citizenship because they don't align with your certain religious belief, I'm not doing business with you. I'm cutting all ties with you people. And even when I start to renegotiate a conversation with you and have a diplomatic discussion about the new leadership, I'm not jumping all in with tanks and F-16s. We're going to have a partnership and a relationship for a period of time before I would ever even consider asking Congress for those kinds of things. So we play this game and things move around just so haphazardly that is how I would approach things. but I have a very strong libertarian bent to things. I think that running on the cut and run and where all that, I think that the scales have tipped too far too quickly, and that we would have to have a more practical and pragmatic approach to scale towards what we want, which is taking care of ourselves first and foremost.
Well, Brandon, given the political landscape and that you probably know these updates probably better than most, how do you see our foreign policy shaking out over the next, let's say, 16, 18 months? Because now you're talking about going into a full election year with a non-incumbent, an open presidency. Where do you see our foreign policy shaping from here till 2016 election, and then post 2016 election? Do you see any change on the horizon?
Well, I think the biggest thing here is will there be enough public outcry and media pressure to force this administration to do anything differently? I think we can hear things about, we throw 400 troops at this, or we send 4,000 troops over here to do this, to do whatever. He'll play those games and he'll do those things, and it's almost just insincere gestures. And actually, I find it offensive when you start to do that kind of stuff, because people get killed doing that. If you don't go all in, and this is why the Bush administration lost me. I'll be perfectly honest. I always have been. I had a very neoconservative approach to Iraq. Let's go in and just lay waste to the place. If there's such a threat to us, lay waste to it, make it glass, destroy it. And we played this PR game and got a lot of people killed for no reason at all. And I think that was one of the take-homes that, for me, American Sniper reminded me of. We don't need to play like this. We don't need to play at, even 60% of our, you're all in or you're not. And I think this administration shows no signs of going all in on anything. I don't see that changing. Continue to just throw enough things at things to say that, we're dealing with this and we're dealing with that and we're this and that, and sounding like they're tougher than they actually are. Hillary will try to, if she becomes their candidate, will try to sound tough, making sure that she gives her voters the sense of security. Not appealing at all to the Republican side of things. I don't think people will be able to get past that. I think it's just a very divided country. I think if that were to change and you get a Bernie Sanders or you get a Elizabeth Warren or someone who's, much more anti-war given, it'll be sort of the Obama approach that we do what the administration's done because they think of it as a good thing. The right's going to continue to throw bombs at everything. I got to be honest. And this is why Rand Paul is really being treated like a redheaded stepchild, and he is, far from a libertarian when it comes to dealing with these things.
Everything.
And it's just if you're not going to play the game of this, we're the world police and this is how we want to deal with things, they will not. They will definitely make sure that their base are brainwashed into and believe that this person is weak on foreign policy, and it will show up in their living room if they don't do otherwise.
Yeah, and to some degree, I think that even what you're saying about what you would do, they make it difficult to have that position because, like what you're saying with Syria, to arm anybody to stand up against Assad. You wouldn't get involved in that. But when what they'll do is they'll play it as, Assad's using chemical weapons and he's killing his citizens, and these citizens need help. And of course, the government's not asking us to come in and help because they're the ones killing their people, and it's in their best interest for us to stay out. So should we go and help these people? And of course, both the right and the left are going to say, yes, let's go in and let's give the rebels arms and let's drop some bombs on Assad's military installations and kind of help them in kind of an insincere gesture kind of way, like you were saying, that doesn't really affect the outcome other than to arm people that we don't necessarily need armed and aren't necessarily our friends in the long run. And then we do these half-hearted moves. We're going to send 400 guys in there. Guys are probably going to be killed, because that's not nearly enough.
Yeah, we don't need to be picking and choosing when we want to be humanitarians. We're either going to be humanitarians or we're not. And I always argued against people who were against the Iraq war if they tried to take a humanitarian stance. I was like, well, wait a minute. Saddam Hussein was murdering, 400,000 of his own people. So if we're going to go into there for that reason, or if we're going to take that approach to things, then fine. Then we should be all over Africa. We should be going into places like Darfur and Nigeria, and places bring people by the thousand. We shouldn't allow North Korea to just be treating people so inhumanely. So I think that those arguments are just not dealt with because people are too busy worried about their talking points and their political donors and not about actual intellectual discussion. And that's where you'll never see me running for office because I can't have those kind of conversations because I'm not beholden to that. And you're right, though they're not going to allow for the compromise. And I think that's where you see and you see with a few other candidates. I mean, I think you'll see a candidate like a Scott Walker being nudged more into play. He's not been a neoconservative by definition on a lot of his conversations about things, but he's getting that way, and he will continue to be moved in that general direction because he'll be told and shown that's the only way he'll have a chance to win the nomination. And that's what you'll see out other candidates that have no business even speaking on foreign policy. They have no idea what they're talking about, but you'll see them speak in terms of the neoconservative mindset to be the world police.
Well, let me kind of shift gears a little bit. With Hillary Clinton's track record as Secretary of State, do you think that she has any kind of foreign policy credentials that she can lean on in the election to say that she's going to actually be able to accomplish any kind of reasonable, meaningful goals in the foreign policy arena?
Well, again, I think that when you've surveyed her supporters, when we have talked to the liberals that are on that side, how they voted Democrats, they're going to vote Democrats. Whatever credentials and whatever flaws she has is not going to matter to these supporters. The country's very divided. Those that voted for Obama will vote for her if she's their candidate. I think the group that moves around is more influenced by turnout than they are about not supporting her. I think that her attitude on the Benghazi hearings, that doesn't matter now. What does it matter now is exactly how many of them approach things. You are going to be able to go into 2016 debates, talk about Lois Lerner, talk about emails on her server, talk about Christopher Stevens and the other 4 that died at Benghazi. It's just not going to resonate. The media will not allow it to resonate. They will just not. And I think that, sadly, talking points, ADD, the way the media handles things, it's too early to know what will resonate. It's too early to know what will shift voters, what we'll pay attention to because of, the economy could change. You have different foreign policy issues that can change. You have so many moving parts that if she's already gotten a pass on what she has survived politically, I believe that she can't survive it more to still appeal to those voters.
Do you think that if she were to win the presidency, that foreign policy would have any significant or even noticeable difference from if the Republican candidate wins?
Well, yeah, I probably do, only because because of how she behaved in the Obama ministry. We'll see the same Obama foreign policy. We'll see a lot of placating to the Russians, whereas a Republican candidate will be like, no, we're not dealing with them that way. We're going to go in and we're going to help support those Ukrainians. So I think there are some very specific differences that we can probably pinpoint. And I know she definitely has a more militant tone. I think that is definitely what we have a story on there right now about Noam Chomsky calls her militant. She's even more militant than President Obama. And I think there may be some truth to that in lip service, but not in action. I mean, we all remember the reset button that really wasn't spelled right. She boxed all that as a State Department. I mean, so we're going to see the Obama administration foreign policy. We're going to drop a lot of drones. We're going to pretend that we're creating safety nets, but then we're going to have cyber attacks against union data records that steal Social Security numbers. So it's going to be this sort of kind of faux approach to security and that kind of thing. Republicans are more all in on that. They're into this, and that's kind of become part of their political identity. It's become part of their money machine. It's become a lot more of their talking points. So you'll see some action on that to make sure they fuel that machinery. Because if they get in there, they seem like they're soft. They know there's no chance for re-election. Right.
Now, I don't know if you were listening to the show before you came on, but we were talking about China. Obviously, we've got this data breach that is being attributed to the Chinese, and I said earlier, for many years, actually since I was a teenager, that China is trying to conquer us economically because they know they can't do it militarily, and they do a lot of things aggressively to kind of undermine. And do you think that we should really consider China as an ally and do business with them the way that we do? Is it safer for us to kind of play it this way because they are so powerful, or should we get into calling them out a little bit on what they're doing and behave a little differently with them?
Well, I've always said that I think we need to behave differently. I think we need to be, just as a whole anyway. I mean, I can't stand the fact that everyone wants to say that we're beholden to the Chinese. Well, why are we? Because of how we don't penalize for making all of our stuff. So if you want to get American businesses to make our stuff again, then we got to get regulation out of the way. We got to make it more to make DVD players in the United States and not in China again. So, when it comes to a cyber attack, at the moment we knew that it was actually China, we have the best hackers in the world. So we can fight back appropriately. I mean, I think this is, again, where the Obama administration wants to sound tough. We want to have terror. He'll have a cyber terrorism committee, a cyber terrorism czar, cyber terrorism groups, increase more cyber terrorism access, expand NSA, and then not do anything about it. It's not just the Chinese. North Korea, they're on the top of the list when it comes to the hacking. We know they're behind the Sony hack, for instance. The Iranians have an amazing hacking ability. So there are 4 or 5 of these countries that are doing this kind of thing. And if we don't start to push back to say this is our sovereign power, this is what we're going to do, then it will eventually end badly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think, and that's kind of my point. I mean, you're absolutely right in that there are other countries that do it, but there are these other countries we don't have a friendly relationship with them. We don't deal with North Korea or Iran the same way that we deal with China. In a lot of ways, China is kind of a de facto friend or possibly even an ally to some degree, at least economically, in the way that we do business with them, in the way that we kind of placate them, and just allow with this, and they kind of thumb their nose at us, and they have spies on the ground here in the United States. They have hackers breaking into our government servers and private. They have teams of hackers that are hacking into Target and Home Depot and the banks and everything else, and we just kind of let them get by with it and act like they're our friend. And I think ultimately that's going to blow up in our face in a really bad way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, when you start to add in, whenever they started to hack in, I think it may have been the Koreans actually, but I think it was when they hacked into the New York Times. Guys, you got to know nothing's off limits, man. If you're going to hack into the New York Times, man, we're all vulnerable.
Yeah. And the funny thing is I always like to make the point whenever anybody tries to put anything on North Korea's shoulders, that North Korea is just a proxy of China. That North Korea is, absolutely. I mean, they are completely controlled, owned, operated, and directed by China. And they don't do anything that they don't have permission from China to do. For all the chest thumping they do about going to war with Korea and going to war with the United States, they're not doing any of that until China lets them off the leash. And if China holds that leash, they're not doing it. And, the North Korean hackers doubt that they're directed by China, that it comes from orders in Beijing that ultimately these North Korean hackers are doing these things, and China kind of gets a pass on it because they're like, oh, hey, that was North Korea, that wasn't us. But everybody knows that you're controlling North Korea. So it's just kind of weird how we give them a pass on everything.
Like a shell company.
Yeah.
Or a shell corporation.
And even if you're wrong, even if is acting independently on some of the things they're doing, it's benefiting China because we always show our hand with how we respond.
Yeah.
So China always learns a little bit more about how we're going to handle certain scenarios, how we're going to respond militarily, diplomatically, and economically.
And given this whole part, and now you have a candidate such as a Hillary Clinton with her experience in Secretary of State and whatnot, between the multiple wars that's going on all over the world, and then all the cyber information overload and the attacks that in essence it is a act of war once you start hacking into the federal government files. Is she vulnerable to a Bernie Sanders, or is that just not going to happen? Is she vulnerable because are there people that are like, listen, you're on her side that listen, you're so much like the Republicans, even we don't like you. We'll go with the Bernie Sanders that will, pretty much say, hey, we don't want to have anything to do with any of this crap.
I'm going to still stand on Elizabeth Warren because she's the pure socialist that they all will rally behind. So if it does seem like Hillary's time is not actually happening, then I think that she'll suddenly throw her hat into the ring here. So I think we'll start to see some stuff shake out over the next couple months where that will start to manifest itself, whether or not that need is actually there or not. Bernie is not a viable candidate. Even the liberals I talk to, well, they love the socialism, and they're ready for this. Well, it's the other thing we have to acknowledge, too. The scale has tipped. It has already fallen over. It is bleeding out all over the floor. They don't have a problem with pure and unadulterated European socialism. They don't have a problem making the next step. Listen to what Bernie's saying. That's what they're cheering for. They're okay with all of that. Hillary may not be socialist enough for them. It may not be about her being too neoconservative or too Republican. It may be that she's not socialist enough. If they don't feel like they're going to get the turnout they need for her to win, or if they don't get the right kind of, because I think that many of them are banking that if they can go up against Jeb Bush, that they'll win, because they know that there's so many Republicans, there's so many people that will not turn out for Jeb. They won't turn out for another Bush. They won't be able to mobilize the Democrats against another Bush. But if they get someone who they think is actually a viable threat, let's say they get someone like Rubio, who is just a different form of Bush without a lot of the baggage, then they might actually get scared enough to realize that maybe she's not the best candidate. But at least for now, she's who they've got. They're all in with her. Bernie's not a viable candidate. I don't think that he's got what it takes to mobilize them in that direction, but his message does. And I think that is something to be noticed of.
So you think that if the Democrats don't go with the crazy matriarch, they're going to go with the crazy aunt over the crazy uncle?
Absolutely, because they love her. They love Elizabeth Warren.
No, they do.
They
I have not met a Democrat voter, a liberal Obama supporter that knows who she is and doesn't love her. Now, there's some that don't know who she is or don't know much about her, but those that do, they're all in with her. She could be president right now. She could just start running, and the Republicans would be scrambling on how to unseat that message because her voters are okay with socialism.
Yeah.
But are there enough? Are there enough people that have finally said the American experiment, the American dream is done? We want to be just like Europe. Are there enough people?
But she's selling it in a way that doesn't sound like that, and that's why it's working so well. Minimum wage discussions and what we're seeing with crime, and we're seeing all these different, all that class warfare stuff is exactly what she's just becoming a master at maneuvering. And if this doesn't go that way, even if there's a Republican that wins this time, that will actually feed more into her favor. So if Hillary comes up short, then that's the end of Hillary. You know what I mean? You had your shot. You didn't make it. You're done now. No more shenanigans out of you. Go sit in the corner, go play with Bill, and then it will be Elizabeth Warren in 2020.
Would you agree that the libertarians are really the only ones who are even challenging that message, that the Republicans aren't even trying?
Yeah, I think the only Republicans that are really kind of floating to the top of the polls are actually stealing or borrowing and stealing libertarian-esque talking points. So that is really what America's thirsting for, element of going backwards to what the founders want, more of a constitution. Don't hurt me and steal from me, and otherwise leave me alone. I think there's still a lot of uphill battles with how to move that around and navigate that in the political structure, but that is by far where the country comes together the most. And we see that actually manifest itself in this little blurs. Like we see that with Bill Maher. Bill Maher will come out and he'll have a libertarian stance and we all rally behind, yeah, he's right on this. Everyone will agree he's right on something. But then when it comes out to the next level, then the left freaks out. You know, so they're still we're kind of navigating this little bubble, this little place that's still very unstable.
Well, would you? It's my opinion that part of our challenge and why we haven't gotten to that next step as libertarians is because we don't really offer plans of how this is going to be implemented, a vision of what is going to happen and how we make this happen. And there's just too much uncertainty and this whole, well, everything's got to collapse and then we'll just rebuild it. I think that's one of our biggest hurdles. Yeah, Brandon?
Well, by far. I mean, I think this is where here I am trying to, I'm the moderate of the group, and I'll tell you the reason that it is the biggest problem is libertarians are all in. It's like all or nothing. Abolish the IRS. Okay, well, America's not going to buy into that plan. You got to say, I'm going into this with a 4-year plan. We're not waiting to another administration. This is my 4-year plan to deal with this problem. This is my 4-year plan to this one. You can't be, well, we're going to close up all the military. We're going to bring them all home. Let the Middle East. Okay, well, that's not going to work. Well, we got to scale back our military in a more strategic way. Let's lose some intellectual honesty here. Let's learn from history. Let's learn where our roles can be successful. Let's learn how we can be productive. Let's learn where we can actually protect American interests and not be financing other governments. And there's words and there's phrases and strategies and things that work really well, but a lot of times the libertarian unction that's inside of you wants to take over because you want to just burn it all down and start fresh, and that is not going to sell. That's not going to work. Both sides will eat you up for that. So you kind of have to learn to play this game a little bit differently to how you will implement a plan over time. That's one of the keys. I think that's why Paul Ryan wouldn't even have a career. We wouldn't even know who Paul Ryan was if he didn't learn how to speak over 10-year plans. Paul Ryan's mouth is a 10-year plan. I don't know about him, but no position in office has got a 10-year guarantee. So he's always just blowing smoke. But to have that sort of approach to at least communicating a vision and a talking point and that kind of thing is what they need to do. They have to start branding it in a manner that is a much bigger stroke of the brush to reach more people.
Actually part of the problem within the libertarian movement because myself, I am what would be called an incrementalist, someone who wants to take step by step, reducing the government and doing it in a rational and reasoned way. Which, we're not just pulling the rug out of everybody immediately. We need to take it step by step. But within the Libertarian Party and within the libertarian movement in general, people like myself get a lot of pushback. We are actually very much the minority, and we don't get support within the libertarian circles because that's what they want. To most libertarians, especially the radicals and the purists, we're watering down the message by doing that. Really, I don't believe fundamentally really any different from you guys. I just believe that there's a different way of doing it, and we need to take steps. But they steps. So I think ultimately, because of that battle within, the best chance of it happening is just the Republicans stealing our philosophy and implementing it incrementally.
Well, and that's where Rand Paul found such an audience, right? You got people that are very closely like-minded and to an active political role. He would have a stage on the House floor. He would have opportunities to speak on the messages. He'd have an opportunity to stand on a certain kind of vote. And I think that, and I'm even more compromised than what you were saying because I'll take the person that's, a score of an 8 and over the person that's a 2. If you can move closer to my ultimate goal, then I'm all in. And I think that's the problem because we come across as being compromising, we come across as being sellouts and whatever. And I'm like, look, the end game. Touchdown. The end game is still this on this topic, on this issue, on this debate, and I think that the problem is everybody wants it now, and we have that problem of that inner unction that still wants you to just take over, and it's just not going to happen. It's not even logistically possible. The numbers are not going to be in your favor.
No, not at all, and especially once people. I mean, it doesn't take long either for people to realize the implications of that all or nothing strategy. I mean, it's really going to be painful for a lot of people, and nobody is willing to kind of take that step, not a part of the libertarian movement, and you're really not going to get a lot of traction with that message.
I think the people that defended that, the chaos that will ensue if we don't make the cut now will be far worse. So we might as well do it manageably now than if, let's just say, the currency collapsed. Well, then how are you going to deal with things like, the complete welfare state? How are you going to deal with things like immigration? And that's where I think we lose. It's where Gary loses a lot of people from the more Republican-leaning pragmatic sides, because everything that we talk about is tied together. So when you say, well, hey, you know what, I don't have a problem with, a bunch of people coming over here that want to make $8 an hour washing dishes in restaurants. If you're Gary Johnson, well, you can't say that, and then, but because he's looking at it at a bigger picture, he's looking at that scenario with not having a welfare state, with not having all these foreign wars. Meanwhile, there's other people saying, well, hey, we do have a tax structure that uses a welfare system, and we do have all these foreign wars going on right now. So right now, you can't just not have a border protection. Where his stance is, the border is not really a big deal. So where's the pragmatic line? Because everything kind of goes together. If you did,
well, I think you have to tear, and you have to try to tackle them little by little with the appropriate response, knowing that that's how they're going to approach things. So for me, with the Gary Johnson approach, I would say my goal is, look, if we have 100 million people that want to come here and make $8 an hour and work as dishwashers and landscapers, that is fantastic. Let's get them documented. Let's figure out the best system. Let's put in place the best system to get them on our system, to integrate them in and expand the population of America, to make it grow, to make it flourish. We're going to get great ones, great people out of that. And let's be stern, let's be strong with who we don't want. Whenever we have repeat criminal offenders that identification that obviously have just escaped Mexico, they're basically just nothing more than a glorified refugee, then we need to figure out how to work with the Mexican government to make sure that they are jailed, they are in prison, they are doing whatever, deported back, to not be part of that equation and not disrupt the whole thing as the rotten apple in the barrel of apples. Then you go on to the next piece of that, as you're saying, the currency. And the problem is with many of the topics, like you were saying with currency, and they're very abstract. I think we have to find a way to get to concrete messages and concrete clarity with the right kind of talking points. That's, you steal a little bit from the Republicans and the Democrats to appeal to both sides, and you got to say, listen, fighting for a $15 an hour minimum wage isn't going to work if it's going to bankrupt every McDonald's and Starbucks. So we got to find the right practical way to increase the people's opportunities to live, to make a better wage, to have I think, but that's not done with a magic wand to just make the Starbucks go broke because they've got to charge $12 enough for your coffee. That's not going to work. So we got to find the right solution, and just coming up with an arbitrary knee-jerk reaction is not going to be it. So I think you can find the right spin and the right way to angle and cut into that. And some libertarians are better at articulating that. And I think there are good messages and bad messages that you kind of have to work through. And again, it's topic by topic. It's almost like a list of line items that you kind of have to work through.
And it's funny because I agree with what you're saying there. But that what you're saying is also going to get you completely excoriated by other libertarians.
That's the problem.
They're like, you're compromising, you're watering down the message. We need to be free, all or nothing, and then suddenly you don't have support from your base. So how are you?
As a Democrat, I'll be all right.
I'm sure you'll be loved by the Democrats.
You would actually, in theory, if you were a libertarian right now, you wanted to do a Rand Paul type, merger, your best bet would be to run as a Democrat. It would be. It would be to run.
I don't know why there aren't libertarians running on that same approach, to be honest. Become the Ron Paul in the Democrat Party, because
Absolutely.
They're going to love you on the social issues. Mm-hmm. You can really kind of spin some of the conservative, economical, and the stuff that you really got to get to as down the road stuff and not sound so crazy.
Exactly.
And it would probably be an easier path.
And you could really pull from a lot of the hierarchy of the Democrat, past, you have, the Kennedys and stuff like that. I'm going to be more like a JFK type of deal. And I just don't understand why.
I would run.
I don't understand why the libertarians don't have, why we haven't taken a Rand Paul person and infiltrated that party.
Well, my personal opinion.
I'm too evangelical to do it. That's why they don't want me.
Well, my personal opinion on that is the people who are on the left side of the spectrum in the libertarian movement, tend to be the more radical, the closer to anarchist.
Yes.
So whereas the people on the right side of the libertarian spectrum can work within the Republican Party, the people on the left side of the libertarian spectrum can't, because they'd rather just get
Not
rid of
have
the
a party.
government completely. And
This is true.
Those lines that the Democrat Party, where they butt up against it and have conflict with them, they are so vehemently against them and so willing to fight it that they can't assimilate into that party the way Ron Paul and Rand Paul are able to assimilate into the Republicans. I think that's really the reason why we don't have the Democrat equivalent of a Ron Paul.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, it's most likely, because that's definitely what my experience is. It's pot smoking for all. It's free for all with sex and porn, and it becomes a very extreme thing, and they don't nice with the ones they're trying to appeal to. So even when you get to a practical application to that, how you get your votes, whatever, it doesn't matter, because it's all or nothing. And I think that's all of nothing is still nothing. So it doesn't really matter.
Right.
It's gonna be, if you can get something, now at least got 20% of something. And I think that is a little bit about where I am and what I believe would work, especially from an analyst standpoint.
Yeah, and that's what I don't get. I don't understand the being attacked by our ideological allies because I'm willing to take less than 100%. I'm willing to take 20% or 50%. But if I'm not taking 100%, I'm not really a libertarian. And
I think the sense it's because of the journalists and the sort of analyst stance that I'm at now, I don't seem to get attacked the way I used to. But if I were to try to run for office, or if I were to try to take more of an actual active role, that's when they would turn on me.
Oh, absolutely.
Second.
Absolutely. And you would actually, someone like you would be attacked from all sides, because the libertarians would find something to attack you on, the Republicans would find something to attack you on, the Democrats would find something, and that's the sad thing, is because you're definitely a pragmatic person who genuinely cares about the world and would like to make it a better place. And people like you on any end of the political spectrum are the ones who are attacked and driven out. It's like, get your torch and pitchforks. We've got a pragmatist here.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely I don't fit in. So I don't play nice with any of the clubs, so I don't get invited. They don't want me there. Once you start talking, you're like, oh, whoa, you're too much on this topic. We can't have you for that. And that's usually how it goes.
And leave it to libertarians to pick one thing that they don't agree with you on and ruin your entire chances. They're like, well, he just believes in that. And it's like all the rest of the things that you could bring to the table are great, and they'll just eliminate that one thing. No, that can't be our guy. It must be Gary Johnson.
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's the way it is, I think, with the other two parties too, though, because if you get into, especially from the evangelical side, your stance on abortion matters. If it's gay marriage matters. If it's immigration matters. So it doesn't really make a difference if you say the wrong thing, or if you kind of plan that they've been told by Hugh Hewitt or Rush Limbaugh, then you're going to be out of that group too. Same thing on the left. If you're not pro enough this or anti that, I don't sound anti-war enough to appeal to that group, so therefore I'm out. So same kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing is about being a part of the Libertarian Party, is that you end up getting attacked over one issue and driven out. It's part of the thing that I like about the Libertarian Party, and part of the thing that I don't, because, with the Democrats and the Republicans, there's a litmus test on issues. If you don't agree the right way on abortion, you don't get to play in this party. If you don't think the right way on foreign policy, you don't get to play in this party. And in the LP, if you're able to articulate position properly through the prism of the NAP, well, you're a libertarian. You're just not going to get the support of different factions of libertarianism. So whereas we're kind of open and welcoming to anybody because we don't have that litmus test as to what you have to believe on this issue, we also end up being exclusionary at the same time. There are so many ways in which the libertarians are their own worst enemy. And this is one of those ways where
Well, guys, I kind of have to wrap up a little bit, so let me definitely plug that you should definitely turn out and see Jurassic World. It was a very entertaining flick. I'll transition into some pop culture and some other nonsense, so you can definitely check that as well. And of all the great casting ideas in the world, they're going to do a females Ghostbusters. If you didn't know that or not, that's not the issue, but that's what they're going to do. So it's an all-female cast of Ghostbusters.
I heard they cast Chris Hemsworth as the receptionist.
As the receptionist. That's just a brilliant move to at least just raise an eyebrow and go, all right, now I'm in. I may not have been in before, like I could buy into the comedic aspects of
awesome.
this, but with Chris Hemsworth as the receptionist, that to me is entertaining.
Yeah.
Can he be dressed as Thor?
Out that he would try some sort of Thor reference or gag. I actually would not.
I think there definitely will be
something.
some kind of reference to it somewhere at some point. He'll probably get hit by lightning or something in the movie.
That would even be better. Yeah.
Back to Jurassic. Was it more of a complete like remake, or was it more of an extension of?
Well, it's not a remake at all. It is definitely a sequel to just the first movie. It's completely irrelevant to seeing the second and third one. It doesn't play homage. It continues the story to the first one with countless numbers of reference to the first one, both incredibly in your face and some more metaphorically. I thought it was really the special effects just are amazing. I thought that some of the concepts were good. Some of the spoilers and some of the twists haven't been ruined. I wouldn't recommend going out and track down every single like that, but it definitely delivered. I was very pleasantly surprised by all the different aspects of it, and it sets up more films, but not necessarily in an irritating way or in a way that becomes real clear and obvious how they would do that.
Is it like one of those where it ends where you almost have to have a sequel, or it can go without a sequel and you'll still have enough closure in this movie?
Well, we know there's definitely sequels in the works, but it's similar to like remember in Jurassic Park, it ends and you know that there could be more movies, but it's not really like, there'll be more movies. It's got a lot more of that. We all talked about the Barbasol can of shaving cream wasn't found, so maybe that'll be key. It's got that sort of element to it. There's more blatant storylines though that come forth that set up something else. It's just there's just so many of those moving parts. It's hard to know how they would approach doing more movies.
Speaking on the movie side, how'd you like Mad Max?
I gave Mad Max a 5-star, which is like an unprecedented review for me for a modern film. I don't usually. Inception was the last film that I saw. I came out of going, that's a 5-star film. Mad Max, I think, just brings action, sci-fi, the apocalyptic nature, great acting, great special effects, great literal effects by not using CGI. It was artistic with all the different transformations they used, creating such a amazingly detailed world of almost creatures. They're almost not human-like in some scenes. Was just absolutely brilliant. It was probably the best film of the year.
Wow.
Yeah, I loved it. I was very hesitant at first about Mad Max because I did love the original movies and I was so worried about what they were going to do. And just knowing the way that Hollywood has been with makes or reboots and things like that from 80s and 90s movies lately, I was very skeptical and very worried. But I got to say, I was impressed, and it may actually be the better movie over Age of Ultron.
Ooh.
Well, I think it is from a movie standpoint because it definitely has a lot more elements that aren't in a traditional action film. Where it's got a lot more artistic value. It's got a lot more of deeper themes and things like that. Ultron is really doesn't live up to the first movie in some ways because of the grand nature of seeing all the characters together again. This went to another level with some of that, but not from a thematic standpoint, not from a from that element of it. For that, that's why I would say Mad Max is better. Not that it's not entertaining. I think Ultron's incredibly entertaining, fantastic film.
Yeah. I think what I really liked about Mad Max and the difference between like what Marvel is doing is Mad Max doesn't assume that you're so incapable of filling in the blanks yourself that they have to explain everything. You don't get a massive backstory on Max or on I forget her, Theron's character.
Yeah, we just get a little 30-second blurb of him talking about how crazy he is, and we move on. And he has a few moments to kind of reveal more about his background, but we don't get some spoon-fed diatribe for 2 minutes of our time.
Yeah, you don't have the whole like structure of this society. You kind of just by context within a few minutes you understand who the war boys are and kind of what this structure is, and you don't actually have to have a scene or a half hour play out that is just there to kind of explain what's going on in the movie. It kind of takes the assumption that you're capable, you're smart, you can figure this out. Watch the movie. I think by the end you'll be happy, and I really was by the end. But I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Actually, we've gone over time, but we'll let you go, Brandon. His name is Brandon Jones from the Global Dispatch. You always add so much to the show, and thank you for joining us today, Brandon.
Appreciate the opportunity, and guys, talk hard.
Talk hard. Always a good time. Always a good time to have Brandon.
Brandon's awesome.
I got to fill in Alex's role since he's not here today. It's
always a good time to have Brandon. It's always a good time. Always a good time.
All right. Well, I think that does it for the show today. You got any closing words, James?
No, I don't. I think we went through it all. Looking on Global Dispatch, though, a lot of things that we were touching on. ISIS right there on the Mexican border. And it's a very thorough website if you want to continue on after we get off. There's a lot on here. CIA talking about the war on terror. That's probably going to always be in existence. And
oh, absolutely. The Global Dispatch, it's an incredible website, great news source, and I recommend it to all of our listeners. Go ahead and go to the Global Dispatch and see what they've got up there. But that's it for the show this week. We'll see you next Friday.